Hello, hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here, Basketball Rewind, and guess what? I am joined by Beyond Locker Room Coach Roach. I can't get rid of these guys. Every time I try to get out, they pull me back in. Of course, I'm never gonna get rid of these guys, so get used to it, folks. And we are joined by a new guest. That is going to be Dusty. Of course, he is known formerly, as the Spurs reporter online. I will definitely be linking his information down below, just for a little bit of brief introduction. He's a two-time Emmy nominated producer. I don't know if he wants to just talk a little bit about his work before covering the Spurs, but Dusty, the floor is yours.
Oh, thanks, guys. It's really great to be with you guys. I've seen some of your podcasts and to be invited to chat our favorite topic is an honor for me. So thanks for having me. I definitely sort of had a career in television and film, which continues to this day. I've always been able to sort of juggle both. Both are passion projects, both are loves of mine. But I started covering the Spurs back in the 90s when the internet was in its infancy, and was lucky enough to cover the team during our dynasty years. And now, all these years later, here I am still doing it again. The difference is this year, I was lucky enough to be in San Antonio covering the team for the first time. I had always been doing it from Los Angeles. I don't know if that's going to continue next season right now, but I'm here and we're here to talk about hoops. So let's get at it.
Awesome, awesome stuff. Before we get into anything else, Coach, beyond, I know how you're doing, but how are you guys doing for the audience, of course?
Hey, my man Rory won, so I'm good right now,
Did
man.
he
He
did?
made me lose, he made me lose a few hairs and stuff like that, but hey, we still here, we're still alive, we're
I,
still good.
I did see the hairs get a little grayer on
Yeah,
TV
well,
for
yeah,
sure.
exactly.
Yeah. Coach.
Yeah, that's a whole other story.
It's good to be of Irish descent today. I think believe Rory's from Ireland. Is that right?
Northern Ireland.
Northern. We
No,
gotta be specific about
be
that.
specific, regardless though. No, it's good to see. My first time watching the Masters. For pity's sake, I know I'm a basketball guy. So
Hey man.
Same. I was joking that you two are probably the only guys watching the Masters. The ratings are terribly down, and they've been going down since last year. But I'm glad to hear that it was exciting and that your guy won.
Yeah, I'll go just off topic just slightly, and I'll just one golf story, and then we'll get going into this. So I watched Tiger at Bay Hill win one of the
Wow.
times when he won. I was a kid. Phil Mickelson's ball almost hit me. It literally was 2 inches from hitting my lap, and the woman who was the ball spotter was looking at me, went past her,
Kenyon's claim to fame.
right? And then here's the crazy thing is that Tiger's ball hit right in front of me. And there's actually a newspaper article, and you could see my red hat behind him.
How funny. That's
So that
awesome.
yeah, it's been an interesting life for sure.
I love it. I love it. Thanks for sharing that. That's very cool.
So yeah. But without further ado, for cheaper sports that are growing throughout the world, basketball. Here we go. So, of course, you are the Spurs reporter. First of all, what did you think of the game? Because we just had a game, and you guys played the Raptors. You guys ended up winning, I believe, 34 games. We
Yeah.
won 30 on the season. So this is the end of the season for the Raptors, and I believe for the Spurs as well. So yeah, what
Yeah,
did
this
you,
was this
yeah.
was all a game of just pride because both teams had basically locked up their positions for the upcoming ping pong ball challenge for the
Th-
lottery.
Thank you, by the way.
Oh, exactly. And it's kind of all about that because neither of these guys were going to make it into the playoffs. So they waited till the last game of the season, and then it was all about pride. So we got kind of a nice show. And today was Fan Appreciation Day in San Antonio. So everybody got t-shirts and there was lots of giveaways, and it was nice to be able to win the game because you guys actually had the Spurs on the ropes for a little while. But it was exciting and it was fun, and it was I was sitting there honestly during during the national anthems, because of course they play the Canadian national anthem and then they play the US national anthem. And I was just thinking about how far we've come as countries. Here we were playing this game today and thinking about all the headlines and tariffs and all this, horrible attrition stuff that's going on politically, right? But here we were playing a basketball game, and it was nice to see and get away from all that and just enjoy the game today.
Absolutely.
Agree.
Um, I think one of the things, just I'm not going to go too in depth with the game, but it was, first of all, it was nice to see Stephon Castle finish out his season. Possibly going to be the Rookie of the Year. We will see about that. It's kind of his to lose, in my opinion. We did do an award show here before, so I'm definitely really excited to see two teams ended out. I will say on the I just need to double check this, but yes. So on the sad note, we did not see the final game of Chris Boucher in a Raptor uniform. So that was a little sad. We will see if he is around next year. Maybe for his sake, I would say, I would hope, just because if he's going to be on the team, you would hope that he's on a team that is going to play him, because he still has, a bit of a bit to give to the game, so to speak.
Hey, it's a real legitimate concern and a question mark, because the reality is we're heading into an off season that I believe we're going to see a lot of movement, probably more than we've seen in the last few years this offseason. There's a lot of people that are concerned about the aprons, for example, right? And the way that the teams are spending money. And we're entering, it's going to be more money to spend, right? The salary cap is going up thanks to the TV money, but still, there's a lot of teams that are going to be moving veterans and names who want to clear their books. And so I would expect one way or another, the Raptors and the Spurs are going to be involved in that, and they're going to make some moves. So, valid point.
I do remember hearing that the Spurs might be moving to a new home next year. Is that correct, or is that just
no, that's still a little while away. It has not even been approved, but already the groundwork is being laid literally and figuratively for that to happen. There's a new arena. They've identified the location. They started tearing down the building that is in that location now. But it's a building that's been there since the Hemisphere World's Fair that took place here in San Antonio back in 1968. And that building actually kind of looks like a building from the TV series where there's like a 70s Lumon building. I can't remember the name of the series now, but it's on Apple TV. In any case, they started to tear the building down this week. And then the people who are the Preservation Society they filed a suit to stop tearing down the building, and so there's all this kind of drama. But it's funny because the people haven't even voted for how that new arena, which is going to be probably $1.5 billion, is even going to come into play yet, or who's going to fund it, how much the Spurs are going to pay for, et cetera, et cetera. But definitely that wave of enthusiasm and motion is already in play, and you can see it happening. But yeah, it's not going to happen next year. As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't realize the Spurs are in the arena that they are in now, which is the Frost Bank Center, formerly the AT&T Center, et cetera. But they have a lease there through 2030, I believe, and they will probably play there until that time. Yeah, and from here to whenever the new arena is built, it's all part of a huge downtown redevelopment. It's going to affect the Alamo Dome as well, et cetera. But yeah, that's basically the boots on the ground report about what's happening with the Spurs' new home, and definitely they're riding the Wemby train of excitement to get that arena built.
It's really interesting. I know, we don't have to go into this direction too much. It's a different team, but it's always interesting. I know with the Celtics sale happening, I'm like, well, they don't own their arena either.
Right.
It's weird because the Raptors do, and you always think of like how that factors in because you're only making money from one end or the other. So it will be interesting to see what happens. Now, you guys made a lot of moves.
Yeah.
this season, and some of the moves were quite interesting. I personally was hoping that before the season started that you guys would get Darius Garland. That didn't quite happen,
Yeah.
but I would say that De'Aaron Fox, a Kentucky man himself, I think that that's a pretty decent consolation prize. So, what did you think about those moves heading in? And then I'm gonna, tap into the other guys to see what they think as well.
Well, Darius was definitely a hot rumor this past summer. I couldn't see how or why the Cavs would get rid of Darius. It seems like anytime a player is of interest to the Spurs, then the team wants to try to keep him because they see something that, that's special about them. But yeah, De'Aaron Fox was an interesting move because obviously this is the player that people like Brian Windhorst were talking about, that there's going to be players who look at the situation in San Antonio, look at Wemby and say, I want to play with that guy and I want to be in a winning culture, a winning situation, which San Antonio, let's be honest, has not been a winning culture the last 6 years. This will be the sixth year we're not making the playoffs, but the seeds are in the ground, they're being watered, and you can see that the efforts are going to lead back towards contention. And if they do their job properly this summer, you could even see a lot more growth in that area. So, yeah, it's obviously a really interesting situation. I feel bad for Sacramento. I've said it before, but I think that Sacramento just kind of got the bad end of the stick with that deal because the player had was holding all the cards. You want to send me somewhere else, go ahead and send me. But we're telling that team, my management team and I are telling the other teams that I'm not going to sign there. So, good luck getting a good deal for me. So the best possible deal they could get was from San Antonio, and man, the Spurs took advantage of that, I think. And it was a solid move, but I do believe that the Spurs are going to be one of those teams that's going to be active. I think that, we can talk a little bit about having veterans on your team. This young team has played out and developed to the level where they can. And you saw when we brought in Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes that started to rub off on them in a positive way. And they had really high expectations. And I was at Media Day this past year at the beginning of the season. I got the sense that it was playoffs or bust. And I reported that. I'm like, these guys really want to win this year. This is not a tanking year. And then all of a sudden, it became sort of a tanking year because of the injuries to Wemby and De'Aaron had obviously surgery and so forth. But these guys have a lot of ammunition on the table, and they have more money coming in. I did a deep dive recently, and I don't know how this projects for the rest of the NBA, but I'm sure San Antonio is not alone. I kind of calculated how much money the Spurs have been making the last few years, and what they're going to be making next year when the TV money comes in. And basically, from what I can tell, without releasing any figures right now, it's going to be double the amount of profit that the money coming in to San Antonio. So that's going to be burning a hole in somebody's pocket to have that much money and not go out and get, let's say, a $50 million a year type player into San Antonio. They have the other players and pieces they might need to make a trade like that. And because we know that there will be movement in the NBA this season or this offseason, I would not be surprised if the Spurs do go after a big name or a big player that becomes available. Even right now, I don't know if you guys saw this, but I ran a little a thread about it yesterday. There's already rumors that Bradley Beal, of course, may be bought out by the Phoenix Suns. And one of the teams that's being mentioned as a potential suitor for him, if there is a buyout, is San Antonio. And there we are there with another veteran presence. The other news today was here in San Antonio, Chris Paul played 82 games at 40 years old. Unheard of in the NBA. Nobody's ever done that. He set a new record, and it's the first time in his own career that he's actually played all 82 games for, I believe, since 10 years ago. So, Yeah, man, that veteran presence is needed. You need to have that in order to make some noise in the playoffs.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to go to Beyond really quickly on this. I know Beyond has always said when you have the guy, right? Obviously, I believe that you build around a core, but within the core, there's, a guy.
Yeah.
Um, when you have a guy, and Beyond can speak to this, that there's no talk of timelines. You only talk about timelines if you don't have the dude, or if the dude isn't ready yet. But when you have someone who is so talented early on, it becomes imperative that especially with the CBA, it's a lot easier to get that guy. Beyond you could go from there as a jumping off point. But yeah,
Well, yeah, and I think Dusty's point talking about the veteran presence, there is a delicate balance of how much veterans do you have, because then you deal with veteran presence. And what I hear when I hear veteran presence, the first thing I start thinking out is the calculation of minutes. Because now you have young guys. We're going to talk about one that I was bullish on my man Castle from time. I had him second in the running behind Sar for Rookie of the Year when we started the season, and I think he's a special type of player. And now you're going to get another top player this year in this draft, and you're starting to think to yourself, like, how many more veterans do you have? Because at some point you're going to have to balance the veteran presence versus these guys need minutes to become the players they need to become. And I'm just curious from a standpoint, Dusty, from your standpoint from the front office, like, what is it they're looking for in the offseason for a free agent standpoint? From like, are they looking more in the front court? Are they just looking to tweak the bench? Like, what is it? What do you think that the front office is looking for this summer when they're looking for
Well,
these presents?
it's a great question, and I think, I've been pondering the upcoming draft, and the big question is always, do you take the best player available, or do you take the best player that fits your need at the moment, right? And the Spurs are obviously, they have like a 26% chance of landing a top four pick. Only 3%, or actually 8%, or 6%, I'm sorry, 6% of landing the number one pick. And depending on what happens with Atlanta during the play-in tournament, because they also owe us that pick, they may have, let's say, another 3% chance. But realistically, you look at the top four players or even the top 10, and you're going to have to make some choices because and this is why I'm not making any predictions as far as who they may go after yet, not until we have the ping pong ball situation figured out.
Mhm.
But that question becomes the most important. Do you take the best player available, or do you take the player that you need? The player that we need is probably a front court player who can spread the floor. Arguably, there's people saying, no, we need a guy who can bang down low, who can get rebounds, who can help Wemby, because obviously Wemby doesn't want to be a center. He wants to be a power forward, or a three, whatever, right? So I think we're going to have to wait and probably circle back maybe closer to draft time and talk specifically about what we want in terms of veteran presence. I again believe that there's going to be a lot of noise, so perhaps that's where you address the veteran situation, and you figure out, number one question about veterans is, will Chris Paul be back in San Antonio? Uh, I think the Spurs, who traded away their best backup point guard in Trey Jones, are going to need a backup point guard. If Chris Paul decides that he wants to be a backup point guard and come to San Antonio again, then that would be perfect, because you can bring him back and you can have that great off the bench presence, intelligence, et cetera, that you're going to need in the playoffs, and you're still going to have that sort of teaching that he's brought in, right? That learning. Um, but that's a big question. And even Chris has said that he's going to talk to his family and so forth. But if I were the Spurs, I would sweeten the deal a little bit, and I would say, let's offer him a 2-year contract, maybe for 15 million bucks, right? Instead of the 10 million that he made this year. But the one thing he chose to come to San Antonio for was that starting position. That's a promise that was made to him. If you come here, we're going to let you start, and they did that. But some people are really upset about that because it obviously affects, like you said, Coach, the minutes that you give a guy like Stephon Castle, right? And even though when you really get down to the nitty gritty, Chris would start the game. He'd play about 5 minutes before Stephon would come in. But still, there was a lot of fans upset about that. And you could argue that, it is affecting that development. Although I agree with Kenyon that this Rookie of the Year award is Stephon's. He believes it too, and it's for him to lose. But yeah, it's going to be a really interesting offseason, and you bring up some really, really great coaching topics there, Coach. When you say the veteran stuff and the minutes equation, that's huge.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that is that I guess going back to your Chris Paul quandary, first thing, I think next year it'll be hard to justify Castle coming off the bench. That's
Yes.
the first thing. Second thing is Castle at some point, and it started happening later in the year when the injuries happened, they give him more reps on ball. Because
Yes.
I think when it's all said and done, Castle was a bit, I see him more as a two, but I think he's kind of like, I know folks
Remember what he said when the season started, right?
I know. I'm getting to that. That's what I'm saying. When I say this comp, I'm not saying he's going to be this, but he has a blend similar to what SGA is, who in this case here, on paper, obviously is a two guard. But when they play him in this case managing the point essentially. And I think Castle is kind of the same type of obviously a lot lower grade in this case here, but who knows what he's going to see in 5 years. But he's that same type of way where he could play on ball quite easily as well, too. And I think that was where my concern would be if I'm a Spurs fan. It's like, why are we sacrificing this much time for Chris Paul, who's going to be at 41, when we have a young, maybe burgeoning star that we should give as many reps to as possible? I'm always in the position like, listen, man, at that point we get to a player of that nature, where Chris Paul is, I'm giving it to the kid. That's me. But hey, I am fascinated to see what Spurs fans think and what the management does on that front.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Paul is definitely special, but Chris Paul is not
the future.
He's not playing like LeBron is right now. Let's put it that right. Although 82 games is incredible at his age.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's 40 years old. That's crazy. Yes. 82 games. First time it's been done. But what's interesting that a lot of people, it kind of goes by people. We talked about it quite a bit. Was the Spurs are aiming for that positionless basketball type of offense. So when Coach Pop was still around early in the year, he basically said Stephon Castle can play the 1, 2, or 3 position. And they were doing that early in the year. You would see 3 point guards at the same time on the floor. And I would ask them, I'm like, okay, so when you guys are all on the floor as point guards, do you decide or talk about who's going to bring up the ball? And they're like, no, whoever happens to be there brings up the ball and we run our offense. And they love the idea of this positionless game because that's what you see in Europe. That's what's working. The most innovative offensive championship type basketball is being played positionless. And you even saw it at UConn where Stephon obviously cut his teeth for a year before coming into the league. So we've seen situations where Stephon has played 2 and even 3. So I'll never forget at Media Day, the first time I met him in person, because I was also a big fan and kept saying to people, you want to get Stephon Castle on this team. And a lot of people weren't even sure that he could shoot and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, you don't understand. This kid is special. And the first time I met him and I was walking with him as I was interviewing with him, it jumped out at me like, and I'm a 6'2" guy, right? And I'm looking up at this guy and I'm like, holy cow, he is a lot bigger than he looks on the court. This is a tall kid. And I immediately knew, this kid is going to be special. And I continue to believe that he's going to do some amazing things this summer. He's going to work on his game. He knows he's a gym rat. Like he doesn't know what to do with this extra time. He even told me, I don't even know what to do with the extra time when I'm not on the court here. So I expect he's going to be working on that 3-point shot. He's probably the worst 3-point shooter on the Spurs right now. And he hits in the low 30s, perhaps percentage wise.
Oh
So
man, that sounds nice.
yeah, so he's definitely going to be working on that part of his game, and I'm sure others. And the thing I noticed today, interestingly, during the Raptors game was he was getting a lot more calls than he did throughout the year. Like the refs didn't know what to make of him, and he finally is getting the respect when he drives to the hole to get the whistle. And so that's going to be a game changer too. But yeah, so real interesting. I'm glad that you guys are all Stephon Castle fans because I tweeted the other day something about the fact that, and other people have said it too. It's not about the stats with this kid. It's his presence. He
Yes.
just plays like a vet, and you don't see that very often with a rookie. And he just has this thing. And I remember talking to him at the beginning of the year and saying to him, Stephon, I studied all your high school tapes, and I could see that you're still not even reaching into your bag of tricks when you're driving to the hole. Like, when are you going to start doing that? And he's like, well, I'm still figuring it out. I don't want to step on anybody's toes. And as the year went on, he started to do that more and more. And I still don't even think we've seen what this kid can really do that we saw him do in high school. Not even at UConn, because at UConn he was playing sort of a hybrid position.
Yes.
But he's got a whole other level that he hasn't even shown us yet, and that's exciting for Spurs fans and for NBA fans, I would think.
I mean, one of the things that he said, or at least the stories that came out from UConn, were about him saying to Dan Hurley, "I want to come here because I want to win," and they did it, of course. And he was willing to basically, I won't say subjugate himself, but put himself in a place where I might not be playing the role that I want to play in order to learn the habits that are needed to be a better player. And that takes a lot. Sometimes people, they need to have the position that they want right away, and then they learn that over time. I think he took the right approach, and he deserves a huge amount of praise for that. Also,
Oh,
with Chris Paul being there, there's an institutional knowledge transfer that occurs, as well as obviously there's a lot of vets in the background like Tim Duncan, greatest power forward in my opinion to ever play the game. Coach, I want to just tap you in right now. Your thoughts on some of the institutional knowledge transfers that can occur. I mean, I know the Raptors. Have a shorter history than in some ways, and we're still getting there. But yeah, Coach, your thoughts, and then we'll go back to Dusty.
Well, I kind of wanted to ask Dusty a coaching question on this, and it's not about Pop. It's about the
okay.
new guy. It's about Mitch.
Yeah.
So Mitch Johnson comes in, and sometimes these things happen where an assistant gets promoted for a variety of reasons. His situation is a little different. You're taking over for Gregg Popovich, one of the greatest coaches of all time. And two, you're taking over head coaching a guy who arguably is the best prospect to come into the NBA since LeBron James in Wemby. What has that transition been like for him? How has the response been maybe from media people, players, and stuff like that? How has he been this year since he's taken over? I guess is my question.
Full disclosure, I'm a huge Mitch Johnson fan. I believe Mitch has a very special basketball mind. He played point guard in college at Stanford. Stanford is a smart, that's an intelligent type school of
Ivy
people.
League. Yep.
Yeah, so he has paid his dues. He has learned from the best in San Antonio. And in regards to the transition with Wemby or, sort of being there as a coach for Wemby, he was Wemby's development coach before all of this happened.
Yeah.
And that's actually a hat that he hasn't really transitioned out of during this last few months as he's been the acting head coach. When you go to practice, when you go to the games, he's still working with Wemby. Before the game, he's out there working with Wemby. So they like each other. There's a real interesting dynamic between them. Mitch is also the guy who developed some of the other young players that have been dealt, to other franchises. So he has a really good record of developing young players, and he has the mindset to, if they wanted to continue with him, I'm a big fan. I don't think that that's necessarily a problem. However, the question that is sort of around is you have other coaches that have a lot more experience. Heck, even in San Antonio, we got Brett Brown sitting right next to him on the bench, right? Who has coached to, other teams and done really well with them. But the Spurs decided that it was Mitch Johnson. The question becomes now that there are other coaches that are obviously very good coaches, good basketball minds, certainly in the top five, let's say, of basketball coaches available in the NBA. You would have to include Mike Malone, and you would have to include Taylor Jenkins, both who have interesting sort of ties to San Antonio. Taylor cut his teeth in San Antonio. He was the Austin Spurs coach for a long time. He's deep into development. He has a certain respect in San Antonio, and I consider him a very good coach. And of course, Mike Malone, who comes from a coaching family and has really good relationships with Pop and is more like Popovich, which is on the disciplinarian side, he would be a good choice too, right? So the Spurs front office are going to have to make a decision about whether you tap into that or you leave things as B. And some people feel that if you leave things as B, meaning Mitch stays, that it would not be taking advantage of the marketplace and what's available. So, from that standpoint, it's their call to make. But no matter what, the thing that's hanging in the balance is, will Coach Pop be back?
Right, and I think that brings up, right into the next point is, of course, Pop had a very interesting year. We'll just leave it at that right now. But what do you feel is the mood in not just the room, but more so in the city in terms of how people are feeling moving forward with the franchise?
Well, it's a mixed bag. I think first of all, everybody loves Pop. Everybody respects him for what he was able to build here, what he was able to do and accomplish, and, where the franchise is because of him. Uh, Very few people are like him in the NBA. You would have to say maybe Pat Riley would leave his fingerprints like that, where he's been and been able to build a program like that. But the reality is, there's probably going to have to be some sort of a decision shortly, and I mean really shortly, to take advantage of the offseason and what moves and strategies for the draft and for the offseason, trades and free agency. They're going to have to make a decision on the coaching front, and that decision belongs to Coach Popovich alone. He has earned the right to make that call. And from everything I know about Pop, in his heart, in his mind, in his soul, he wants to come back and coach. But sometimes, medically and otherwise, what do they say? Time is undefeated. And this is a really tough situation that Pop is dealing with from a medical standpoint. So it's going to be really interesting. It's certainly a storyline I'm watching, and a lot of other people, even people in the front office in San Antonio, are watching to see what's going to happen. That's probably the biggest storyline right now in San Antonio is what's going to happen with Pop, if anything.
So I think Beyond wants to tap in here.
Yeah, I just want to just a quick follow up. I trying to be as sensitive as possible, but let me ask you this. Let me put it to you and phrase it this way. If, for example, if the draft happened and say they got Brandon Miller in this case or Scoot Henderson, would this be a discussion right now? Do you think this would be a discussion in Pop's mind?
You mean last year if they had drafted those guys?
I'm saying considering
I see where he's going.
I'm saying where Pop's health conditions are, right?
Yeah.
Same thing happened. But Scoot Henderson was your draft pick instead of Wemby. Would this be a decision for Pop where he's questioning coming back or not?
I mean, if you put it a different way, it's like sorry, I want the Raptors to get this, but say you guys get Cooper Flag, right? Or you get the number one pick. Is there a higher or a lower chance of Pop? How does that influence Pop's decision?
That's another way of going about it in the future.
That's a really great question. Theoretically, more than based in reality. We'll go theoretical first. Because you have Wemby, you have to respond quicker, right? You're going not to want to make the mistake of letting that window of opportunity. Wemby wants to win. Wemby's a winner. Wemby needs to work a lot on his game. He would be the first one to tell you that. Everyone sees Wemby as this, sort of savior, big time, superstar, generational talent, etc. But Wemby's the first one to recognize there are things I need to do to work on my game, to work on the fundamentals, to work to become a better player. Yes, I have talent. Yes, I have skills, but I need to work on my game. And I think he's concentrating on that. He has brought in to whatever the discussions are in San Antonio regarding the upcoming drafts and trades and whatever else the vision is of building the contender. That's for sure. And he was definitely involved in discussions about who they were going to draft, and they got who they wanted, Stephon Castle. And Wemby was very happy about that. But let's talk about the reality now. The reality is uh, you may want to run a 500-meter dash, but if your feet are not working right, you're not going to be able to do that, right? So the question for Pop is, can he, regardless of the Wemby timeline, come back and be the guy who needs to run that 500-meter dash with Wemby? And I hate to make it so simple because it's a complex situation, but yeah, whether it was Wemby or Scoot or anybody else, I think the reality is the NBA is so competitive right now that if you're not winning, you're falling behind. If you're not building to win, you are falling behind. And I had one GM in the West tell me that early this season, and it's absolutely true. And it's interesting because the GM of the team who told me that, and I won't disclose who it was in a situation where it looked like their team was going to really make some noise, and they got hit with injuries, and they have fallen behind, and they're going to be a lottery. They're going to probably be picking, top four. So it's uh, Silver has made the NBA really competitive, and I think he's done an excellent job of that. I mean, even today there were playoff picture, ramifications in the last game of the year, right? And luckily now it's all been settled, and we're going to start the playoffs on Tuesday, I think, or the play-ins on Tuesday. But man, with the competitiveness the way it is, you don't have time to lollygag. You gotta work constantly, more so than I ever remember, and I've been covering this league for decades. And it's an interesting situation, but yeah, obviously, our prayers are with Pop. Our prayers are that he regain his full physical and capacity, and that he live a very, very long life. And he deserves all the success in the world. But definitely his franchise needs a decision.
For sure. I think the other thing, if you look bigger picture, like GM wise, the league has sped up, and I've made this comment as it relates to the Raptors, where we used to be very vulture and wait for the right move to just like pounce, right? And we
Yep.
don't do that anymore. You can't do that. You have to be a bit more proactive as a franchise. And so it's we'll see. It's going to be very interesting. Coach, your thoughts?
Well, I think to Dusty's comment about the league speeding up, you have a talent I'm sure wants to win quicker than more so the rebuild process. LeBron, wanted to win in Cleveland the first time, and they came close, but they just didn't have enough talent. Giannis, he's always putting pressure in Milwaukee for them to compete. Is Wemby going to be kind of at the head of this, saying, "Come on, let's pick this up. My prime matters," and I understand, certainly understand that. What are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting because you watch the national media, and they have been loud the last 2 years. A little less this year, but definitely the last year. They were on their soapbox saying, hey, Wemby's going to become unhappy. He's going to want out of there if you don't build this into a contender quickly, blah, blah, blah. But it's self-serving talk, because the reality is they want to feature more Spurs games. Wemby is a rate ratings magnet, not only in the US, but around the world. And they want to be able to feature Wemby in more basketball games on their networks now, not later. And they want the Spurs to have a competitive product to make those games as, challenging, ratings wise, a hit. And the reality is, the Spurs have played a lot of games on national television the last 2 years where they have been blowouts, and it's not good television. And so, when you hear a lot of the complaining and the flag raising, the red flag raising, the alarm sounding that Wemby wants it sooner than later, a lot of it is BS. Like I said, Wemby has bought in to the plan, whatever that is. I think that plan right now is on pause until we have well, it's not necessarily on pause, but there's a lot of questions around it because of the situation with Coach Pop. But Wemby is not going to be one, I don't believe, that is going to demand this or that. Maybe his people, maybe his coach, I mean his management team or whatever will do that, but I haven't seen any of that at all. It's kind of a unique situation, and he's more like, I would say, Tim Duncan or David Robinson, in that, they're loyal to the franchise, and they're gonna let it play out. So let's see how San Antonio takes advantage of that. I believe they are. I believe they've already been doing all their homework, and they're laying all the bricks, forming that path ahead of them, to where they're going to go. And they've got a lot of chess pieces that can move, as needed. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, one of the things that I find, this is why I love the new TV deal, is it's bringing everyone was so concerned, and I said, well, wait. The best time in the NBA was when it was on NBC. Okay, NBC. I'm not perfect with the terminology. Beyond knows the difference between cable versus network, or however you guys say it down there. But essentially, rabbit ears is the key. You want it
Yes.
everywhere. And NBC has the network everywhere. They're good at the. Also, I think Amazon, from the WNBA standpoint, I think they do a good job of this too. But the storytelling before each game,
Yeah.
that's lacking. Not just making fun of, whatever is going on in San Antonio, which, fair enough. But going one step further and really telling stories, right?
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that Beyond made this point, and I'm going to go to Beyond on this actually, is that if you go back, some of the games that they were hyping up were like, well, last year they were not the best games to even hype up, but the stories that they told behind it gave a lot more meaning. And so it's one of the things that I'm excited for. And I know a lot of people were talking about this earlier in different spaces or whatnot. They were saying, oh, does this put more pressure? It doesn't matter whether it puts more pressure. The storytelling is better. And that alone makes it a better product. And also it makes it more competitive, because now you're competing with, the real big, but the big dog in Amazon, where now you have to compete because as a network, you don't have the same amount of data that they have to give to Adam Silver and the NBA commissioner's office. So, yeah, I'll go to Beyond on that. You can kind of round that out, and then we'll go back to Dusty from there.
No, yeah, I was going to go. Actually, my initial point was going back to the national broadcast games of the Spurs. I put it this way: I have not been a fan. I've made my points clear on this show. I've not been a fan of the current broadcasters that do the NBA at this point here. I've made it very clear
from my standpoint.
Exactly, they've been a detriment overall for the growth of the league. I've said it from time. You mentioned the storytelling point. I always use the analogy that if you have a restaurant and someone keeps telling you, in this case, the burgers stink at the restaurant, would you want to eat at that restaurant at some point? No, you don't want to eat at the restaurant. Now, as far as the Spurs go, I get it. Here I'm going to actually defend them a little bit. I get them salivating, to use another food analogy. I see them salivating for the Wemby thing because, let's face it, Dusty confirm this. Two of the best games that he's ever played have been on national TV. I sat here one night, NBA TV. I wasn't even planning to watch a game that night. But hey, Suns Spurs were on. I'm a Wemby guy. And I say, let me go and see what he's up to tonight. My mouth was dropping. I'm East Coast. I'm at midnight. I'm sitting here, my mouth dropped. I'm texting you guys.
Yeah.
to see what's going on out here.
I remember sometimes it's rough to stay up, but you stayed up for that one.
The business of Kevin Durant, these boys, man, you all need to see this. And I could see why a TV executive say, please. And then he did it again this year on Christmas Day. I'm sitting here with my family. You know, the Knicks usually have the early game. Sometimes usually be a dud with the Knicks. But I say, okay, my man's in the garden. Let's see what happens. And once again, another show was put on that night or that afternoon. I get the mouth-watering thing. Now, true, you have a few zeros like OKC. That did not work out so well with him and Chet that night.
Yeah, but that's okay. I mean, you saw what he did to our team. He undressed the face of the league and showed him who was boss. Like, I'm sorry, sorry, Raps fans, come at me. But all disrespect, but disrespect was given that night.
I have over in my head and wonder to actually incorporate that in the show. But
hey man, it's always a fun time here.
Man. But I think moving to the broader picture of the TV and the broadcasting, I am looking forward to see how they do the storytelling next year, especially if a lot of these young guys are on the cusp of being like, the next names, be it Wemby and whomever else in this case here. I think NBC, to your point, and in the history of them, I think Amazon, based on some of the stuff they did last year just alone with the WNBA, it was really refreshing to watch the first game with Caitlin Clark, and like they took it back to Indiana. It's like, French League, Indiana, and also it's like
it was really impressive, like how they literally. I'm like, man,
right.
It makes it educational. You're like, oh, I didn't know that.
That's right, because you and I and all of us on this call know the history of Indiana in this case when it comes to basketball.
Yeah.
But a lot of these young fellas nowadays don't have a clue what it's about because obviously the Hoosiers are no threat anymore, and obviously Larry Bird in this case isn't really a guy in your face every day, right? So they don't know what the Indiana connection is about, and obviously with Bobby Knight, we know his situation. So they don't have that connection in this case, or those understandings from a historical standpoint. In some ways, it's not just the storytelling becomes teaching and educating as well too, which I think if you go back and watch some of the other sports, the one we just talked about just now, that's one thing about golf. You can sit down there and you watch 3 hours of golf and you will know exactly who won when and who did this.
Oh, they put it front and center every single time.
Dude that you never heard of before.
They put the graphic of these are the 5 past people, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Yeah, yes.
They teach you in this case within that 4 or 5 hours you're watching the Masters. And I think the NBA needs to get back to that, broadening back to what it used to be. It's the only sport I know in this case that cuts his nose off despite its face. I mean, and I'm glad in this case here. I always say this, Dusty. I'll throw it back to you. I always say in this case here, overall, as a commissioner, I like Silver more than I like Stern. But sometimes, you know what? I need a little more Stern in it than Silver. And in this case here, if this was David Stern when it comes to TV stuff, this thing would have been nipped in the bud 6-7 years ago. We wouldn't be at the state we're in right now. This would have been nipped in the bud. And sometimes you need to sometimes have, what's it saying, horse racing? Sometimes you got to put the whip on there, man. We ain't doing carrots anymore, okay? So I appreciate, and I think that on a side note there, I think in some ways, why LeBron's speaking that way, because I think he realizes there's no way giving the whip out here. Right, David. Adam's gonna be nice. He's gonna be, he's gonna be thing. He might say it in a very subtle way, but that's not gonna get the message across these guys. And I think him putting himself out there saying, "Okay, I'm gonna be the one to defend the sport in this case here, since no one else wants to go and put kind of the big fist on here." And at least he'll play bad cop for the time being in this case to get the point across, and maybe have some folks change the culture of what they're doing, which I think is happening as we speak with some of the current broadcasters. I'll leave it at that. But Dusty, I'll be concerned about your interesting with your background of what you thought of the broadcast partnerships that we've seen so far and what you expect moving forward.
Do you see any more tunnel walks next year, or what are your thoughts?
I'll tell you what. As an NBA fan, we are about to enter into an era that has never been present for this league. This league is going to reach more households, more eyeballs than it has ever reached with this new TV deal. And it's going to reach it in new ways through streaming, through cable, through platforms, even online that there are things coming that we don't even know about yet that are going to make this experience of the NBA even more immersive than it is. There's new technologies, new things that are really going to open up the game. Yeah, and it's going to be fun, right? And it's going to be done at a worldwide level. So, as far as opportunities for guys like us to do analysis and to storytell and to chew on what's happening with the league, we're going to also be doing it in a way that's going to be reaching more people than has ever been possible for us to reach. So it's exciting. Uh,
Mm.
you said something interesting about the league. Sometimes it cuts off its nose to spite its own face, and I think that that's true. And I think that they've got a really smart room full of people trying to figure out how to do it better. That's a good thing. Where you get in trouble is when you have a commissioner or people in charge who don't listen to feedback and who don't admit mistakes. The NBA has admitted mistakes, even with what happened during the last All-Star game, right? And they're saying, okay, we're going to make it better. We're going to make it better. And it behooves them to make it better. The broadcast partners, the ones who are giving all these teams, billions of dollars now to be able to broadcast their games, they want to see the best product on the floor. We're going to see changes in rules to make the games probably better or more competitive or whatever. Those are all good things, but they take time. The league doesn't want to make any rush decisions and just kind of appease everyone at the same time. They want to make smart decisions, and I think they've got a room full of people at the league who can do that. But it's going to be an exciting time to be an NBA fan because we're going to be reaching people like baseball used to, let's say, or even football, right? We're going to be closer to that. And I remember a time in my life when we couldn't watch certain NBA games unless it was on tape delay, you
Hey,
know. Uh,
Dusty, I'm not. Maybe my vintage may not be as old as your vintage, but as a kid, I do recall a little bit of those games being delayed. In this case, even as a kid, so like folks don't understand what it used to be like. I think that's where the disconnect comes in. But to your
yep,
point, I think one of the things I will say in this case, I think Adam Silver overall, I think he's arguably of he called the big four sports. I think he's been the best commissioner of the four. I think if you look at what commissioner's supposed to do, I think for the most part, I think he's done a great job navigating through some things that no one even thought of that he
yep,
had to deal with, be it their own making, kind of like rogue owners, I'll put it that way, to
yes,
walked in like, it's like day two. Oh, here you go. And to be quite
yeah,
honest with you, Stern could have dealt with that situation for decades. And he never dealt with it. Right. So
that's correct.
right. He dealt with it within the first month of his thing to the pandemic and so on and so forth. I'll say this, though. I think he's been let down by his partnerships. That's why I'm so tough, because I think if he had partnerships in this case that was seeing what he's doing, to your point, trying different things. And for the most part, if you take a baseball analogy, I would say, he's hitting a pretty good batting average so far. Right.
Yes.
The play-in's been a success.
Yep.
Wherever you want to say the play has been a success. Even the in-game tournament has been, I would say, moderately, I would say it's been a success. The
This
Yes.
is
game
perfect
competitive
from
nature.
a story standpoint. I mean, to your point, this is a good example of a missed opportunity. Last year in the playoffs, you had the Bucks versus the Pacers, and that was a
Mhm.
perfect thing to say, okay, look what happened in the play-in, right? Look
Right,
at
look what happened during the season, right? We got a
like
first series
look
we
at
want to
that
take the
and
ball
bring
away.
that animosity back, and tell it like it's a fight night, right? Like
Right.
that's what they used to do. And I don't know what So this is what I'm looking forward to moving forward. And
Right.
I don't know, is TNT going to be part of this? Is why I forget, because playoffs
No,
is a little bit
TNT.
different.
So playoff wise, TNT gets one conference, ESPN gets the other conference.
Gotcha. So I
So
don't know how much they're going to make a big deal of
well,
They're going to
themselves.
license out the NBA on TNT through the Charles Barkley
Yeah,
group is going to be licensed out to, I believe, ESPN.
yeah, oh yeah,
yeah, but I'm more thinking like this year, like if they're covering it at all, are they going to talk about, well, we're still on our retirement tour, or
yeah,
are they
pretty
going to talk
much,
about the game? Because that's what
pretty
I
much.
want. I'm not here. I don't mind them, but I'm here to watch the game.
Well,
Tell me about the game.
I'll be straight here. I mind them in this case here. I told Front Office Sports yesterday,
Yes.
and then they said, I said like when they had something. Well, I guess they were before the Masters were doing something because they did the coverage a little bit, and Ernie's talking about, oh, it's been wonderful, blah blah, this and that. And I said the Front Office Sports account. I said the Stones ain't had this many farewell tours as these guys, man. What the third, fourth time? like,
And it's interesting because we were talking about chewing on the game and analysis and so forth. Do you notice that the loudmouth sort of controversial analysis guys are the ones that are getting the big contracts, the multi-year deals with ESPN, and the smart guys are kind of being pushed towards the back. Why is that, right? We want more of the smart
Well,
guys. We
Well,
want more of that.
I was going to
But
also say that some of those guys aren't getting the big deals with the Amazons and otherwise because there's a if
yeah,
y'all knows where I'm going is that
yeah.
I think there's a I don't think that ESPN NBA partnership is as stone solid cut as maybe they would
Well,
like.
Dusty, we when we went through the deal and we looked at the deal, it's like, okay, in name only, ABC/Disney is considered to be the number one partner. In name only, in our opinion. When you really look at the deal and look at the contract and look who gets what, it's really telling you NBC is the number one partnership, really, without saying so, right? Just not to ruffle feathers. But when you look at it, it's like, oh, and then you see they have a clause in this case, I think 3 years later, they could potentially get the finals. Like, really?
yes.
Interesting.
Yes, and that's, that speaks to the fact that obviously, um, like you said earlier, Kenyon, the fact that the Rabbit Ears Network, which is going to reach more people, has that type of power, obviously is a big, big deal. A lot more people are going to get it on free TV, right?
Mhm.
But on the other hand, ABC, which owns ESPN, and Disney, which owns ABC, all those guys, they're looking at building a new streaming platform. They're already building it, and we're going to get hit with the reality next season that, hey, if you want to watch all the games, you got to be on our new streaming platform. You're going to have to pay for that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
So,
okay.
well,
Okay, I would push back on that a little bit because I don't know if and based on the contract that's been done so far, the TV deal, I think, and based on what Adam Silver just said only 2 weeks ago in his press conference, the word cable could be considered to be a pretty much a swear word at this point for him. Okay, like,
well,
right.
yeah, I was going to bring that up. Is that this? I've heard this about ESPN before that they've been planning this for a long time. But the problem
yeah.
is the second that they do that, what happens to a lot of basic cable bundle or again, I'm not sure the network TV. You know what I mean? Like when people are paying big money for TV,
Yeah, the
what
subscription.
happens? The
The
subscription
streaming
model.
platforms.
Yeah.
What happens to that when you don't have to buy ESPN anymore?
Well,
Or buy your package to get
a
it.
better question might be what happens with all the people who are buying the league pass and are very dissatisfied that they're not really getting what they paid for, that you still have to
Well,
sign up with the regional sports networks and so forth to get all
So
the
that's
games.
yeah,
There's going to be,
Raptors fans have always had an issue with that because of how our thing. It's like
yeah,
League Pass. You don't get League Pass to watch Raptors games because like
right.
you don't get access to Raptors games up
It
here.
doesn't work anyway here.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, especially as we were talking about the fact that you guys are media owned there, and the media ownership controls a lot of this stuff, right?
Exactly.
There's about 5 teams right now. The April 1st deadline just passed. I tweeted about this the other day. There's about 5 teams, NBA teams, that have not figured out yet what they want to do with their regional sports network presence. In other words, they may not jump on that FanDuel platform or app for their regional network coverage.
Right.
So even now, like there's still a lot of things in movement that's going to happen,
Mhm.
but I can guarantee you that it's going to hit the fans at one point where they're going to realize, wow, this big, huge TV deal that's giving us more money to spend on players, it's coming from our pocket, and somebody's gonna have to pay for that, and it's gonna hit, and it's not gonna be popular. It's gonna be hard.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
and
why.
already, even in places like San Antonio, which are not media-owned teams, there are repercussions, and there's a lot of fans complaining. So, but it's one of those harsh realities, guys, that we're going to have to live with, and we're going to have to navigate, even as popular. And look, how many national games are we going to have a week now? Like it's going to be insane. It's going to be insane.
Yes, I
If you're,
mean,
if you're
right
a
now I think
basketball fan, you're just going to have
yeah,
to pay for it, unfortunately.
yeah. I think we worked out. I don't know, Kenya. We had three weeks, 3 days of the week where it's national televised games, and some
Yep.
sort of Sunday
Yep.
game. I think a Friday game. There's a Monday game for Peacock fans if you have Peacock, if you have that, and ESPN has one of the games in the middle of the week as well. So there might be four days a week. But I think the phasing out of Disney a little bit, and I get it. I get it from a standpoint. Disney's great for other purposes, from a marketing promotion promotion standpoint. If you go to Disney World, they got a whole NBA store down there. When I went down there, they have all that. So I get the synergy makes sense that way, especially when you deal with kids. But I think they are slowly phasing Disney out of play, especially the ESPN part of it. They have less games now coming up. I think most of those games are going to go to Amazon. Oh yeah, Amazon got their game of the week, and I think you're going to see more and more that happens. The local part is where I find that's going to be interesting to figure out that in NBA TV, what to do with those rights and how to deal with them in the future. That's where you're right. Those moving parts are still to come, and see what happens with those RSNs.
Now, just to shift gears a little bit, and I'm going to plug Coach back in here, just to kind of go back more on the micro level. First of all, you guys have a contract to figure out with a certain person by the last name Sochan, if I'm not mistaken. He is. And so first of all, Coach, what was your thoughts on Jeremy's year? I mean, he grew. We did, if I'm not mistaken. No, sorry, I'm shifting his hairdo with someone else that I saw in FIBA. But what was your thoughts, Coach? And then we'll go back to Dusty, who could talk to us more about what the contractual situation was.
I always find it fascinating the year he got drafted. I think it was 2022, if I'm correct. And that was a draft where I heard many say he got drafted because he was 6'8", 6'9", the two-way versatility. It's not so much that he had this one skill that he was particularly good at, not the offense, not the defense per se, but it's that a combination of doing a little bit of both.
Sound familiar, Coach? Let's not go there today. We're gonna get in trouble.
No, but what I can see from Sochan, that two-way versatility certainly come in handy. I speak to some Spurs people on Spaces, and they seem to be fairly high on Sochan as a nice piece on the team and with Wemby. I guess, Dusty, what are your thoughts on Sochan moving forward?
In speaking to my colleagues, it's a 50-50 sort of take. There's some who believe you don't give him that extension this summer, that you wait for him to see how he elevates his game. They feel like Jeremy has not fixed certain parts of his game that you would want to see fixed. And then the other half is like, are you crazy? You want to hold on to this guy? He's like the best defender you've got, et cetera, et cetera. But when you do a deep dive, really dive into the analytics and the stats, there's a lot to be digested in regards to the reality of what he does defensively on both sides, on the positive side and on the negative side. Is it overhyped? Is it too much? I think the first thing you want to wait to see is what are you going to get in the draft? Like that definitely is going to come into play for sure. There's a couple of 3-and-D guys that are interesting, that are top 25 prospects that you could take with, let's say, that second pick that Atlanta owes you, that might make somebody, believe it or not, that might make somebody like Jeremy Sochan even have to compete for his spot.
Well,
because these guys are more legitimate 3-and-D guys who can hit a three-pointer without the hitch that Jeremy has in his shot, right? Who can play defense at 19 years old that looks more promising, perhaps even at Jeremy's age. And Jeremy's young. Jeremy's like 21 years old, and he's done everything this franchise has asked of him. You talk to the general manager and some of those guys, and they will tell you that Jeremy Sochan is part of the plan, part of the core group that they want to see move forward, right? But yeah, it's been my experience that the Spurs go ahead and sign and extend those guys because you're not talking about a lot of money, but there is the question of what coach is coming in. Is the coach going to want the same things? Is he going to be good at developing young talent? Let's say it's Mike Malone. He may not have the stomach to develop young talent. He may want more veterans right away. All of those questions are up in the air. But does Jeremy deserve success and longevity in this league? I think he's going to get it, whether it's in San Antonio or elsewhere.
And I just want to make sure so folks understand why I say the fly in the ointment. And the reason why I use that phrase is that I think Sochan and Dusty could confirm or not, but I think he's for an ideal of what they thought their team would be pre-Wemby. And then he came along, and then when Wemby came along, I was like, oh shoot, we actually won the prize. And now it's like, oh, we have this other situation here. Now, obviously, we know last year there was a lot of video footage of him being point guard, and we don't get that point forward, and that was a little ugly at times. I'll just leave it at that for the young man. But I'll say this though, the Dusty's point. I mean, he gave the percentages earlier. There's two guys in the top 4 in this case here that if they get picked, it's been fun, Jeremy. That's all I got to say. It's been fun.
Yeah.
So for you, who is, let's say the Spurs move up into the top 4, who would that be for you? Because we talked a little bit about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, one
beyond. Let's ignore Flag, because Flag is obvious.
Well, Flag is one of them, right?
yeah.
Right. So you want a wing guy that could be a two-way player. You don't get better than that. Yeah. And the other one is Bailey. Like, if you're, it's like the guy's almost as tall as Wemby. He's like 6'11". He can shoot threes like
I'd
sleep.
be so sad. I'm sorry, like, no offense to the Spurs fan here, but I'd be so sad as a Raptors fan if y'all move up and we don't. I'd be like, what did we do?
But you know what? I'll say this before Destiny goes. Based on Spurs luck in the draft, which I always tell the folks that want to give me their conspiracy theories, I said, oh yes, because David Stern, Adam Silver been waiting for the Spurs dynasty for 20 years. That one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's some truth to that, because the reality is, in the scheme of things that Silver has in mind for the future of the league and what he wants that to be, he wants to be an international league. He's pushing for that, right? Having Wemby, now, you want to talk about conspiracy theories, having Luka Doncic in LA, the second biggest television market in the country, boy, those are like two big cogs in the pieces that you would want if you want to be an international league, and both of those have come to pass, right? But you definitely want San Antonio to be a contender again, because they have a huge following internationally. Interestingly, in places like the Philippines, which I think is kind of weird, like we have a Facebook group that has 40,000 fans in it, under the Flag Spurs Report, which is sort of my brand, and many of those fans, like a huge majority of those fans, are on there.
It's
from
the number one
like,
sport
what?
it's actually the number one sport in Philippines.
Yeah, and it's like crazy to me, and France now too, right? And so now we got Tony Parker's team, and Tony is front and center. He's got Asvel there, and they're like, hey, we want to be part of this new NBA international picture, right?
Yeah, and
so
I mean,
there's a lot of money, man.
There's a lot of money to be made, right? But I guess what I'm saying is, like, okay, if you want to supercharge the money, and to your point, to have that, then Wemby would have been a Nick in this case. Let's put it that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's not Nick, right? He's not Clipper. He's not net. Right, so I just think that
to be honest, the Knicks, to your point, the Knicks have not been, hyper lucky from a draft standpoint.
My dad suffered the pain for 40 years. Ask him.
Yeah. Well, there was that whole Patrick Ewing thing, right? And then after that, like, they backed off. But that's to the frozen envelope and all that.
So Dusty, what you're saying is really to make everything smoothed over, especially with the tariff situation, that we get flagged, right?
Yes. I would hope so. If anybody, if we don't get flagged, then I want you guys to have it.
The closest place to his home, man. So he might want that.
That's right.
That's right. A jump, man.
Hey, man.
So yeah,
on the Canadian
again, like, we keep running into all the moving parts, the stuff that may happen, but we're at least smart enough to be looking that far. A lot of people are going to be caught by surprise. They're not expecting some of these other chess moves and things that are going to happen. And getting back to Jeremy, just real quickly, the Spurs do have kind of they control the card deck or the chess pieces right now, because let's say you don't extend Jeremy this summer, he becomes a restricted free agent the following year. So it's not like he's going to be unrestricted. So they have some play there. And again, it depends on the coach. Like, the one thing this San Antonio team needs, even with Wemby, is Popovich type coach who will come and bark at these guys and demand more from them. They've had it easy with somebody like Mitch Johnson, who's very kind of relaxed and
Yeah, but you got Chris Paul in the ear every 5 seconds. I mean, like, ain't that no?
yeah, Chris was definitely that. But even Chris has sort of, boundaries that he can't cross. We
Yeah.
need a coach like that, which is why I like the idea of a Jenkins or even a Mike Malone. Mike Malone is going to be way more loud and vociferous than Jenkins. But Jenkins has a presence. He walks into a room, he's a tall guy, he's a big guy, and he commands a certain respect. We need somebody like that in San Antonio, I think.
I was gonna say that unfortunately for you, Ime's already taken, and he is from the
And
he's
man,
from the coaching
boy,
tree. So
you want to talk about hardcore? I did a piece earlier this year on Ime and how he doesn't wait to get back to Houston when they lose a game on the
no,
road. He gets people on the plane to have meetings with him and watch film with him right there, and he's in your face and demanding a lot. And so I think Houston's going to make some noise in the playoffs. I would be surprised if they didn't. And that's exactly, the type of coach that unfortunately the NBA is losing favor with. It'll be interesting to see how long that well, it won't be interesting to see. I think the
it'll be
litmus
sad to
test will
see.
be how well the Rockets do in the
There
playoffs.
you go.
Because, that disciplinarian type of approach there's so much influence that a coach used to have in this league that you're seeing less and less of. George Carl the other day said something I tweeted. He said, I don't understand why coaches are losing influence in the NBA the way they are at such a record speed, because there's only probably 20 guys in the entire world who can do this job well. And you're firing them. Like, we've lost four coaches within 2 years of winning the NBA championship, which is insane.
We had one of them.
We had one of them, exactly.
Yes. Yes, we did.
Yeah, I will say this though. I think there's one other element to your point, Dusty, that I think everyone always looks, what they say in corporate life, they say, you manage downward, you manage upward, right? Everyone always looks to downward. Oh, the players, tisk. What they're not looking at though is looking upward, right?
Yeah.
Because we have a whole different type of ownership groups.
Oh, yeah.
These dudes ain't coming here being like Dr. Bus or something like that. It's like, we can sit there and have a brandy and stuff like that with everybody and just hang out and do stuff. They're not into that. These guys are like hedge fund manager dudes. They're looking to get a quick return. Ain't no one sitting around waiting 7 years for plans for that. That's not how they work in their world. And they're coming in this league and say, we're not doing that. We already said the guy out in Phoenix, right? Like, he's like, I'm not waiting around. Get me Kevin Durant on line 3. Like, he's like, right?
But we all see how that works out. When you try to build a team too fast and take the shortcuts, it doesn't work. And look, I love Mike Budenholzer, who was an assistant here for many years, a good friend of mine, really super nice guy, great basketball mind. He obviously got fired the same way in Milwaukee. They're looking seriously at probably firing him in Phoenix after just 1 year. Like, everybody wants this instant gratification, especially the billionaires.
Mm-hmm.
There is a certain thing that I'm seeing, and I hate to put it this way, but it feels like the NBA players are like racehorses, and the owners are the multimillionaires that sit in the stands and watch the horses race, and they want the fastest horse, the quickest way they can get him. And it's not the way that basketball works, man. And there's just this whole other vibe that wasn't there when the Spurs were winning championships and I was covering the team,
Well, I think to
years
your
ago.
point, I think to your point, what you're speaking to in this case is seeing people as just numbers, right?
Yeah.
When you just see people as numbers on a spreadsheet and you're not actually looking, to your point, the relationship elements of it, and building it out. In this case, say, okay, you know what? I'm working with the coach, I work with the star player, and we're going to figure this out as a troika and get this done. That doesn't happen now. To your point, everyone in this case here is just a spreadsheet. It's just a one. So at that point, when you're that, it doesn't matter in this case. It's like, oh, we'll just move off this player to that player, and we'll just move off this coach to that coach. And hey, what does it matter? And then what we'll do is we'll just raise hot dogs up to their $5 and we're good.
I have a theory, actually. After the theory, we'll go. I want to play a small game, and then we'll end off the episode. But my theory about management in the NBA is that the worst thing that can happen to a manager is to actually win. The best thing to happen is you're on the path to winning.
Right.
Because once you win, the pressure's on.
Mm-hmm.
I want it again. Now do it again. And that is the hardest thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Is to stay up top on that mountaintop. I mean, it's just, but if you're on the path and you're close, you just taste it every single time. Oh, we're right there.
I don't know if Dusty Falls football. I mean, in this case, what can you describe as the Marty Schottenheimer pathway?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because we talked about the storytelling aspect earlier when we were talking about the networks.
Mm-hmm.
The game of basketball, NBA basketball in particular, is so much more WWE than any of the other sports, I think, than football or baseball or whatever. Like there's this drama, this undercurrent of storylines and stuff that are happening that make the game more interesting. And you have the villains and you have, the good guys. And I'm looking forward to, guys, before we say goodbye, the playoffs. I don't know how you guys are feeling, but man, I think the playoffs are going to be fire this year. We're going to see already they've started. Like it feels like there's so much stuff at stake. Even today with Golden State playing against who was it? They went into overtime. I don't even know. My goodness. Who was Golden State playing today? I was watching the game and the Clippers.
Yeah.
They were playing the Clippers, yeah. And they went into overtime and there was so much at stake because one of them was going to be hosting a playoff series and the other one was going to be playing in the play-in. And it's like, holy cow, these are two really solid teams. And I think, for example, just talk about storylines, I think the Clippers, let's see how well this ages, this take. I think the Clippers are going to scare a lot of people. They are quietly ready to pounce and make a lot of noise, especially with a healthy Kawhi and with a coach like Tyronn Lue, who I respect. These guys are going to make some noise in the playoffs, and a lot of people are probably not looking forward to playing them.
If they can, if they get, let me see, I can't remember in this case because I think they're still in the play-in. I think in this case here,
actually, no, they got with the victory today over Golden State. They're in.
They're in, right? So, the Clippers. I mean, in theory they have a type of team that you would think they would be on paper. It looks like they're ready to go, but they got the right matchup.
I was gonna say they're facing a team in flux.
They got the right matchup. There's two matchups I think you're looking for right now. Is that you get Denver or you get Houston. Houston's just for the youth perspective, and Denver, because to your point, I like your term in this case, influx. That's a very polite way of saying it.
I'm trying to be nice.
Someone might say they're crap in the bed, but
yes, absolutely.
My
but it's been so much fun talking to you guys. I hope you guys have me back because I feel like I've got kindred spirits here who get it at the right level, right?
I want to just do
what's really going on.
Yes, I do want to do a quick rapid fire game. So what I'm going to do is each of us is going to give you two names from the draft. One if they reach top, if say it's the fourth pick, and the other one is where they stay where they are.
Okay.
Everyone gives two names. You can tell us what you think. There's probably going to be some overlap, and that's okay. But we're going to just quickly rapid fire. I'm going to go with Coach first, then Beyond, then end with myself. And we're going to throw those names at you. You just let us really know it within a 5-minute span.
All right. Can I bring up my cheat sheet? And I'm going to tell you why. This is an interesting cheat sheet. I've been talking to. I've always taken a lot of pride in our draft picks, like who we call ahead of everybody else. Last year was Stephon Castle, for example. But this year I got a really interesting list from a guy who is a respected. I'm not gonna give away who he is because he's a really good source for me. But he gave me a list that is unlike any other draft list that I've seen because it's based on analytics that I have not seen applied at the collegiate level. And so I want to refer to that list as we talk about this. I don't know if if I'm gonna have the opportunity to or not, but I want to have my cheat sheet just in case.
So can you play the rule of this? So what we picking?
So imagine they end up with the fourth pick, or they stay at 8. pick one name for
For the Spurs?
for the Spurs. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Fourth or eighth. Okay, gotcha.
I'm gonna start with Coach first, and then we're gonna go with you, and then we'll end with me.
Okay.
So the Spurs have the fourth pick.
So on
Yeah.
the fourth pick, who are they? Who do you think that they should take? And
Okay.
and at 8, who should they pick?
If he's there for, go with Ace. Go with the scorer next to Wemby. Go with someone 6'10". And am I going with eighth too?
Yeah.
Yeah, and at 8.
You guys will laugh at this. I'm going with Derek Queen because I like the other big man next to Wemby.
You're picking one of my guys, by the way.
Coach Roach is on to something. Let me tell you, this list that I've got in front of me ranks the players. Number 1, Cooper Flag, bar none, no matter what analysis you're applying to the list, he's number 1. But number 3 on this list that I've got in front of me is Derek Queen.
Interesting.
Yeah, from like, this is like a deep analysis, pro analytics kind of application that I haven't seen before. I've never seen it in the college game. I've only seen it in the pro game. And they predict that Derek Queen is going to be the 3rd best player in the draft this year.
Fascinating. Beyond
Yeah.
your guys.
Okay. I agree with Coach on the 4th pick because my man VJ, you think in this case with Castle is a bit of duplication a little bit. So I'm gonna go with Ace again. And obviously now picking Fox, Harper's kind of out of the mix because he would have been my pick pre-Hot Fox trade. So I'm gonna go with Bailey. And then I'm gonna switch it up. I'm gonna go for the center because we all know Wemby don't want to play center. So I'm gonna take our man in this case, Kenya, out there in Georgia, man. And Newell in this case, Issa. We're gonna take him.
Yeah.
For a little bit of scoring, but also for that two-way presence in this case, and can run the floor. So that's what I'm going with. Issa.
Nice pick. Nice pick. It's interesting. I thought you were gonna say Kaman Maluak from Duke.
Yeah, Duke. But
We had a good discussion on that, actually.
Okay, that's interesting. What did you guys come up with in that equation?
Well, we figure he's kind of close. It's actually Coach actually came up with this, and someone else actually messaged me about this. He's somewhat like Turner, but way more raw. But especially if you watch Turner, I remember Turner's first playoff season. Yeah, Miles Turner. Turner against the Raptors, I believe it was his rookie season. Right. Completely different player. And I could see him being like that early on. He's shown a lot from the FIBA level. But I think he's a little bit raw for where the Spurs are at. And they don't really have someone in front. And so in theory, an Alexander Sarr last year would have been perfect for them.
Yes.
Right?
Especially defensively.
That's exactly it.
Awesome.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. I don't think that he rebounds quite well enough. And his ability to box out in his positioning, it needs work. It'll get there, but it needs work. And I don't know if
he's going to the right team in this case. Let's put it that way. If he had to figure out boxing and positioning, right?
That is true. I mean,
it's interesting because it's interesting because I do get to talk to a lot of front office guys who never get interviewed or give a chance to really talk or tell their story. But a couple of different front office guys told me that Maluak is got problems, that they see him playing off his heels a lot, and that's kind of a baked in thing. You're not going to be able to fix that. And so the bigger question, like a lot of people have him going with, a top draft pick. And ever since I heard this, I've been watching him play differently. And I agree with what they said to me, which is, what is he going to give you as a top draft pick that you can't probably already get with a lot of big guys that might be available as free agents or that you can trade for that are already established players. So they kind of feel like his game has got some baked in problems, especially defensively, the way he plays off of his heels a lot, and trying to stay in front of his man and so forth. So I predict that we're going to see him drop as we get closer to the draft. Right now, he's like 6, 7, 8, something
I think
like
it's actually
that
higher
on
than
many
that.
other
Maybe
lists.
it might be 5 in this case on some boards, maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
But he's become the new, like I say this way, he's become the new Ace Bailey. He's become the new lightning rod for this draft.
He
I
is.
think
He
it's
is.
like,
Yeah.
not me anymore.
I think so. For you, it was sorry. It was
Newell and Ace.
okay. And I'll just quickly give mine. I think Queen is actually mine if they drop back. And I actually see this is the tough thing because they don't really need a lot of other things. So I actually think that it is Newell. So I think it's Newell, and then if they fall
Newell
back,
at
it's Queen.
4?
I think so.
Wow.
Wow.
Newell,
That's
Yeah.
that's gutsy.
yeah.
You know, in terms of the Malawatch thing, I think it's interesting. I do think it is something that is fixable, but it's tough, and a lot of people don't do that type of core strength and calisthenic work early on. A lot of kids don't. They don't focus on those things. They should more.
No, they want the pipes, man. Come on now.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
know, the calisthenics. Come on, man.
I mean,
Gotta get
I
girls,
mean,
man.
listen, forget the girls, man. You can get the girls with the money.
Calisthenics, they get you girls. They
Just-
get you women. Pipes
Yeah.
get you women. Okay, that's what they think. Okay, come on. Calisthenics.
I hear you, Pion. I've been an old soul for a while, man.
No, I
Been
hear
thinking
you
long
say it.
term. I've been investing
pretty
since
much
you and me were talking. I'm like, yeah, but you remember Palm Pilot? And you're like, oh yeah, I remember. I was just like, exactly.
You were giving the exercise version of eat your vegetables. They don't want to hear that, man. They want to get pipes, man. That's what they want.
Yeah.
I'm just
Exactly.
saying, someone who's I didn't play basketball at that level, but I did a sport at like close to an Olympic level, people. Okay, and the sport required a lot of core strength. You know, and it's kept me looking limber even now. All right, I'm just telling people, just listen to the advice, right? Like,
Eat your
you know,
Wheaties, kid, man.
starting at age 14, you know, do your calisthenics, right? Do your. Anyways, so I think that's enough for basketball rewind. We had a great time. Any final words? I'm gonna give Coach the final word, and then we're gonna, and then we'll, you know, give you off a good farewell. You will hopefully come back in the future, Coach.
I would love to. I would love to. I've had so much fun with you guys. We've got to do this maybe closer to the draft or in the playoffs at the finals or something. But I've had so much fun with you guys. It's been a blast. Thank you for having me.
I'm not sure if you know RC or if you're familiar or if you talk to him, stuff like that. I know you know him, stuff like
Oh,
that.
yes.
Just make sure that if he gets a call from the Raptors, just to hang up the phone.
Yes,
I mean,
block it.
we could burn the last few years, the Spurs and the picks, and no more.
No mass.
Right now, Dusty, the word Spurs like Voldemort, pretty much. So
Yes. Yeah.
Please don't.
There's a few teams like that who will never do business with us again.
Yes,
We talked
sure.
to the first round draft pick.
we don't. Yeah, we are paying our sins for getting Kawhi. We know.
Yes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's been so much fun with you guys. Thank you. I had a blast. Thanks for inviting me.
It's like what they say in terms of the Spurs and the Raptors. It's like with friends like that, who needs enemies? That's a great way to end. It's been Basketball Rewind. People like, comment, and subscribe. Check out Dusty's stuff in the description down below. Hope everyone enjoyed this. A little bit different than Raptors stuff, but we got to cover the league. Again, people, it is Basketball Rewind, not Raptors Rewind. Keep that in mind when people cuss me out about hey, you're a little bit tough on my boy on X, Y, Z. Listen, we cover the league. People, stay safe, stay well. It's I don't have to say stay warm anymore because it is getting a little bit toasty today. So everyone, just get outside a little bit and peace.